What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. We are here today reviewing Moana 2, which openly I will admit was one of my more anticipated PG releases of the year. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Make sure to follow me on all the social media pages. And without further ado, let's get into it. As I mentioned, Moana 2 is definitely one of those movies that I wanted to see right when I knew it was announced. Part of the reason is I do enjoy the first one, but I also show Moana in my classroom when we talk about Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, really looking at their cultures, traditions, and the way their lives are. So with Moana 2, it was definitely one of those, are we going to show Moana 2 in class or Moana 1? And there is definitely a winner this year, and it is Moana 2. Now, looking at the trailers, everybody kind of can see what it is about. Moana and Maui and the gang must work together to lift the curse, to unify the islands again, to reconnect the islands back to what they once were. Now, with Moana 2, I think they did an excellent job of telling more of a story about the family and bringing in other characters and the traditions that Moana and her family share. I think one of the better additions because, one, she is adorable. Two, you could really tell that Moana was her influence, and that is her sister. And so that dynamic, I believe, if they decide to come out with a future movie, there is something there where maybe the sister joins along. Now, when it comes to overall looking at the movie, I will admit the first thing that I really noticed about this movie and why I liked it so much were the songs. I felt in this one, the songs were more powerful, whereas in the first one, you had more of the catchier songs. And so whenever I show it in class, my students are always singing the same song over and over again. But with this one, I felt the songs were more powerful and more direct. And what I mean by that is you definitely saw in a perspective of Moana now has this power and she wants to use it for the good of her island and really the society as a whole. And so I think that is an excellent thing that this movie does highlight. I think another thing that really is intriguing with this movie is the addition of her boat castmates. I think by her bringing people from the island on this trip and this journey, it makes it more meaningful because they all, I should say, can see what Moana is trying to do and how she is trying to preserve the future of not just her island, but all of the islands that surround theirs. And so the dynamic of the crew on that boat is hilarious. The kids and even the adults, including myself, laughed numerous times when they were really on this journey because it was funny. It made everybody laugh. But then we have to talk about Hey, that pesky little chicken. We were not even a few minutes into the movie, and that chicken was a menace. I'm like, oh, here we go. So, Hey is definitely a point in this movie that is very funny, very intriguing is not even the right word, but Hey will definitely keep you on your toes. And I even heard a parent whisper to their kid, that's how you are with me. So stay on the lookout for that. But then we look at it as a whole. From the characters to the songs to Moana and Maui and their journey throughout this whole island saving mission, you could call it. This movie, to me, at many times, I sat back and said, Moana 2 is better than Moana 1. And for many people, that may be something that is agreed upon. But then for some, that's not the case. And that's perfectly understandable. But for me, I thoroughly enjoyed Moana 2 more than I do Moana 1. Now, like I've said before, I was supposed to see this movie in 3D, but there were some wonky issues with the timings that were showing at my Regal. And so it kind of forced me to make a judgment call of, am I going to see Moana 2 in standard or 3D later? And I just chose the standard. This is definitely a movie I will be going back and watching again in 3D. But overall rating for me, it is a 4.7 out of 5. I thought it was a good, solid movie. It is definitely a movie that every family can sit down and enjoy. My one drawback was I don't really know if it was the theater or the movie, and it was how loud some of the scenes were. Yes, I understand that the theater controls the volume, but some of the time it just felt very loud. It also didn't help that I had to move down to the front because I had a wide open theater in my seat I've had booked for the last 3 weeks. And then everybody started to crowd around me and thinking needed to sit right next to me, even though there were rows behind me wide open and in front of me wide open. So I was like, you know what? I'm not dealing sitting next to people. I am going to sit at the bottom. Never do that, but I was actually more comfortable that way, I guess. I learned. But Moana 2 is out now. Go see this movie. You will not be disappointed. I already know seeing it in 3D is going to make it better. But make sure to check out my other reviews. Make sure to stay tuned and hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you all later.